Welcome to day 18 of the course in Mastery. Today, Tom Wood is going to discuss your emotional intelligence, which is measured by your EQ or emotional quotient. Very different from the IQ we are familiar with. It is your ability to identify your emotions and the emotions of others and solve problems involving emotional issues. Then we'll watch a clip from Dave Carey, who was a POW in the Vietnam War. Here's Tom.
Thanks, Coral. Welcome back. I'd like to ask you a provocative question. What is more important to your success and happiness in life? Your intelligence or your emotional control? Which have you studied more and spent more time developing since the first grade? Emotions are at the very core of our decision-making process. And because of that, they are the foundation of our success in life. Emotional mastery is self-mastery. To be sure, emotional mastery does not mean no emotions. Instead, it means all emotions mastered. Aristotle wrote in the Nicomachean Ethics, anyone can become angry, that is easy. But to become angry with the right person to the right degree, in the right place, at the right time, for the right reason, that is not easy. Happiness can come from a feeling of control of our emotions. It means emotional control at work, or an athlete while performing, or in a relationship. Zen monks get in the zone when they chant. Elite athletes get in the zone when they're working out. Musicians get in the zone when they get to that peak place. That peak place is total emotional control, and you can get there. One place where people have trouble managing their emotions is with money. Wealth is simply a formula: buy low, sell high. It's very difficult to hold on to your blue chip stock when it's dropped 10% and you see a penny stock rising 200%. That strategy is called buy low, sell stupid. There's no secret answer on how to control your emotions. Our society is filled with cliches on how to do it. Look on the bright side. Cheer up. Be the ball. Let it go. Get in the zone. All of these have some element of truth to it, but the one I've found that works the most is 20 years of therapy. I'm just kidding. That doesn't work. In fact, what works is when you focus on this one task without thinking about it, without being conscious of it. It's hard to control your emotions. You've got to study this. You've got to do it. Remember, this is an interactive course. I want you to do this today. Here's something that I've learned works for me. Just try it. It may work, it may not, but if you try and you continue to try, you'll find something that works for you. For me, I have success in managing my emotions by doing two things. One, recognizing that I have this emotion. Sometimes that's the hardest part, to becoming aware that you're being controlled by your emotions. And then number two, I just simply ask myself a question. Tom, when are you going to let go of this emotion? Now that question is powerful because number one, it assumes that I can let it go. And then number two, it's just asking for that one thing. When will you let it go? And of course, the answer for me is always, I guess I'll let it go now. You can let go of the emotion. You just have to decide when. Now is the best time. Now this works for me in just about every emotion. Anger, jealousy, even hunger. I ask myself, when are you going to let go of this emotion of hunger? And sometimes just for a second, I let it go and I forget I'm hungry. And then of course the hunger comes back. But the more I do it, the better I get, and the longer I can go without letting the emotion control me. Yes, hunger, jealousy, anger, these sometimes are emotions you want to have. But having the mastery of them, allowing yourself to control them, like Aristotle described, that will create incredible happiness and success for you in your life.
During his 5.5 years as a prisoner of war in Vietnam, Dave Carey was forced to master his emotions in order to survive and maintain his sanity. In this next clip, he recounts a portion of his fascinating story and begins to tell how he and his fellow POWs made it through. Here's Dave.
See? They chopped it away till it ended up being me, my undershorts, and my miles and miles of rope. And that started for me what would turn out to be a little longer than 5.5 years in prison in North Vietnam. The question I'm most frequently asked about that is this: how'd you do that? How were you able to do that? How could you do that? And that's the question I'd like to talk with you about for just a few minutes this morning. How do we do that? Actually, I'd like for you to think about that question for a minute. How did we do that? Here, I'll set the scene for you. I was kept locked up for years in cells that were never quite big enough for the number of people who were in them. On average, I lived with about 6 or 7 other men. I've been by myself for a few months. I lived with a group of 20 men one time for a year and a half. But on average, there'd be 6 or 7 of us in one of these cells. And a lot of them were cells, too. A lot of them were the kind of things you see in a movie where they have 14-foot-high walls, little air slits up at the top, big, heavy door with a little spy door on it. A lot of them were in dungeon-like prisons that the French had built in the early 1900s. We were interrogated on occasion, beaten on very, very rare occasion, tortured on very, very, very rare occasion. I weigh about 200 pounds now. At the time, I got down to probably 125 pounds or so. But once I got down there, the diet would sustain that. We were not allowed to see or have any contact with any Americans outside of our own cell. They wanted us to be isolated, cut off, cell by cell by cell. They believed in divide and conquer. And that's the way they were trying to run this place. How did we do it? Well, you see, in my mind, the answer is very simple. We did what we had to do. We did our best. We chose to grow through that experience. We kept our sense of humor, and we kept the faith. Faith in ourselves, faith in each other, faith in this country, faith in God. And you see, I see those things as directly translatable into your lives. I mean, after all, how are you going to deal with the problems you're going to face? How do you choose to do your job? How do you choose to live your life? How are you going to deal with the tragedy that's coming? How are you going to exercise the influence that you have? How are you going to do what you have to do your best? You growing through all this? You keep your sense of humor? You keep the faith? But wait, before I press you too hard, I owe you a few answers. How did we do it? Well, in fact, the first thing we decided we had to be able to do was communicate. Somehow we knew instinctively we couldn't allow ourselves to be isolated in these cells. I don't know how we knew that. I'd like to tell you it was because we were so smart. You probably wouldn't believe that. I don't believe it either. But somehow we knew we couldn't allow ourselves to be isolated in these cells. So we decided we had to work on that. Actually, let's think about that for a minute here this morning. Do you have this picture in your mind that I've tried to paint, groups of Americans locked up in these cells? Well, we decide, just picture a few of us locked up in a cell somewhere. And we decide, okay, we've got to be in touch with people. Now, there are many parts to the problem. First part to the problem is this: whatever we decide to do had better be very sneaky, because if they catch us, they're going to beat us. So what we decided we could do that would be very, very sneaky would be to go over there and tap very quietly on that wall. That'd be sneaky. Next part of the problem is this: we must now think of something we can go over there and tap on the wall quietly, so that if we got the correct answer, we would know immediately that's an American. They might not be Americans over there. It might be Thai, Laotian, Arvin. Could be our captors sneaking around trying to catch us doing these things so they could beat on us for a while. So we're going to have to think of something that we can tap on the wall quietly so that if the answer were correct, we would know immediately that's an American. What does that sound like? Morse code. Well, Morse code presented a problem to us. We all knew Morse code, of course, and I know that telegraphers can do the dot dash thing somehow with that little key, but us thumping on these walls, we were never able to quite figure out how to do dots and dashes. That's okay. You all work on that for a little while. Other suggestions. I need to tap something so that if the answer's correct, I know immediately. What's that sound like? Shaving a haircut. It sounds like dot, 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 dot. I can tell you this: if there's an American within 100 miles, they go dot, dot. I don't know why that is. I used to think it was because of Burma shave. Then I found out there are people who don't know what Burma shave is anymore. I now believe it's because we have, all of us, wasted hours of our lives in front of that tube watching those cartoons. And they always end with dot, 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 dot. You see, it's automatic. I'll tell you something else now. You have to remember that my observations in Hanoi are through a little keyhole in a prison, but they couldn't replicate that rhythm. Oh, they knew what we were doing. They beat it out of us. But when they'd come around and try to tap us up on the wall, it never sounded like dot, 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 dot when they did it. It'd be different. It'd sound like dot, 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 dot. It was, hey, they didn't have Looney Tunes in that country, you know. Okay, so we go over to the wall, we tap quietly, dot, 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 dot. We get the answer, dot, dot. We know it's an American. What might we do next? Suggestions? We go 1 for letter A, 2 for letter B, 3 for, I can't tell you how old it gets. Tap 15 times on that wall to go find the letter O in the alphabet. See, not only that, in our alphabet, all the good stuff, it's down there towards the end someplace. So the next thing we did was, you picture this in your mind, we built a 5x5 matrix into which we put the letters of the alphabet. A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H, I. Now, some of you already know that I have 25 squares and 26 letters I have to deal with. So we use the letter C for letter K. Now everything fit. So we could tap a number down the side, a number across the top, locate a letter in the matrix. We'd go fast. If you put your ear on that wall, it'd sound like high school typing class just before graduation. That code was so good. We used it for everything. If they take you out and give you the bamboo broom, tell you to sweep down the walkway in between the buildings, you could sweep in the code. See, it'd sound like this. It was like being on the radio. You could do whatever you want. You could tell jokes. The whole world was out there waiting to hear from you. And then if they took us out and did not give us the bamboo broom, we did it with body noises. Not the kind of body noises some of you are thinking about. But rather it'd sound like and we'd cough and hack and sputter and spit. You get in the punchline to your joke, the whole world was out there waiting to hear from you. How do we do it? The first thing we did was always work out this whole communications process. Always, always, always. And I want to tell you this morning that I think the analogy between this story that I want to tell you and your work in your lives is very good. This is very good. See, here we are. We're locked up in these cells. They want us to be cut off, isolated, out of touch with each other. Here you are, in your, we won't call them cells. We might call them cells. Places where you live and work. Now, there is no plan to cut you off, isolate you, get you out of touch. But I know when I start asking the question this way, hey, how easy is it for you to start to feel like somehow you're getting disconnected? Somehow you're getting disconnected or from the people that work for you, the people you work for. How easy is it for you to start to feel like you're isolated? Hey, in a company this big, all over, how easy is it for you to feel like you're hunkered down in Westwood and getting completely detached from the whole company? Or I get real personal too, see. We go right home. I can start asking you about how easy is it for us to lose that kind of connection with our spouses, with our children. How easy is it for us to get isolated and out of touch with each other? It is so easy. Why should we be concerned about that where we were? Well, for starters, if we were going to do anything on a scale larger than a few people locked up in one of these cells, we've got to be able to communicate with each other. If we're going to get organized, figure out what's going on here, who's in charge, do we have some sort of purpose, what constitutes ethical conduct for us, how do we support each other, how do we take care of each other, anything on a scale larger than a few people locked up in a cell, we've got to be able to communicate.
The rest of his story is equally compelling and helps us realize how much control we really have over our lives. Tomorrow, we'll discuss how to create your dream life, and it might not be the image you've always had in your head. We'll see you tomorrow.